the Jets with the second overall pick in the draft, they may or may not take a quarterback. There was a report today, and it makes a lot of sense. They're not going to do anything with Sam Darnold, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL Media, until they evaluate all of the options available to them in the draft. They're going to have the control of the board after Trevor Lawrence. You take Trevor Lawrence off the board, they're running the show. They can decide whatever they want to do. Zach Wilson, if that's a guy you want, fine. Trade down a little bit and take somebody else. You can do that too. But they need to evaluate all of these quarterbacks to the point where they understand who they are and what they can do, to the same level where they understand what Sam Darnold is and what he can do. And it's just sensible to do that. But what it tells me is if they decide to go with a quarterback at the top of round one, Darnold will be gone. They're not going to try to work out some year, and it would be 1 year, not two, where you keep Darnold at the fourth year of his rookie contract as the third overall pick in 2018, plus the second overall pick's rookie contract in 2021. The town isn't big enough for both guys, and if they pick a quarterback, it looks like Darnold will be gone, Charean.
Yeah, and Mike, let's not preclude a trade either there. If the Texans finally pull the trigger on Deshaun Watson, I would expect them to be on that too. I don't expect Sam Darnold to be a part of this team next season. I really don't. I think they'll go a different direction at quarterback, but I do think it's smart, and I think it's common sense that you look at him, you look at every play he had on the field, you look at the people around him, how much was him, how much was the people around him, not having all that much talent around him, and what do you have in the draft? Do you like any of those guys better? So there's a lot to evaluate here for the Jets moving forward, Mike, before they decide who's going to be their quarterback in 2021.
And this is the easy way to look at it. Franchise quarterbacks declare themselves fairly early, regardless of who's around them, regardless of who the coach is, regardless of who the players are. A franchise quarterback is know it when you see it fairly quickly in his time in the NFL. They have a way of popping. Sam Darnold has not popped. When the most memorable quote from Sam Darnold is he was seeing ghosts during a Monday night game against the Patriots in 2019, that is not know it when you see it franchise quarterback. And the Jets want that kind of clear and obvious franchise quarterback. And I think we've seen enough from Sam Darnold to know that's not what he's going to be. Could he be a very good starter in the NFL? Yes. Could he be a guy who takes a team to a Super Bowl? Absolutely. Could he win a Super Bowl? Yes, depending upon what's around him. But this is not a Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen level, all three guys taken the same year that Darnold was taken, by the way. This is not the kind of guy that is an obvious franchise quarterback. And through 3 years with Sam Darnold, we should have seen it by now if it was ever going to be there. And I think it's safe to say it's just not going to be there. Watch, he'll be the MVP this year for some other team.
Well, and it's just what you said, Mike. We talk about the sizzle. No Jets fan is going to be excited about having Sam Darnold return as their quarterback. Nobody's going to be excited by that. So if you get another quarterback in there, whether it's via trade or the draft, I think Jets fans do get excited. They see the future differently. Maybe they do than they do with Sam Darnold returning as their quarterback, Mike.
Yeah, I think that he won't be there. I agree with you. The question is, will it be a rookie or will they get in on one of these other trades, whether it's Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson? When you consider that they hold the second overall pick and another first-round pick, the Seahawks first-round pick, and next year they have 2 first-round picks on top of it, they have the ammunition to be the team that can get the attention of either the Seahawks or the Texans if those teams decide to make a move with the quarterbacks that they have. All right, let's do the same thing that we did for the Jaguars. One guy in, one guy out. Charean, give me somebody who's out there that you think could end up being a member of the New York Jets with Joe Douglas as GM and Robert Saleh as head coach.
Well, Mike, Richard Sherman makes a ton of sense, right? Because of his leadership standpoint and his relationship with Robert Saleh. He can preach what Saleh wants him to preach with that team and bring some leadership qualities to a defense that was terrible last year, 24th in defense, 25th against the pass. I know there's better cornerbacks probably out there on the free agent market, but he just makes a ton of sense with his experience in the system, in the Saleh system, his experience with Saleh. And the fact that, you know, he can still play, Mike. And I just think from a leadership quality, he just makes a ton of sense for the Jets at this point, assuming they have a good relationship. We are assuming they have a good relationship. Maybe they don't. We don't know about it. But assuming they have a good relationship, it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, I'm not going to go full freezing cold takes here and say there's no way the Jets will sign Richard Sherman, but I will say this. It is a situation to monitor very carefully as it relates to the question of whether the Jets even get in on the action, because I've heard time and again the 49ers had enough of Richard Sherman. He's not good enough at this point in his career to be as big of a personality on the team as he is, and that Robert Saleh is not likely to want Richard Sherman at this stage of his career in his locker room influencing younger players, in large part because Sherman isn't good enough to justify putting up with the baggage that comes from having an outspoken guy who's going to naturally lead, and this may not be the guy that Robert Saleh wants his young players to follow. So, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it's going to be a fascinating litmus test as to whether or not there is interest. And if Robert Saleh and the Jets aren't at the front of the line for Richard Sherman, I think any other team,
no doubt,
should be saying, maybe there's a reason Robert Saleh is not at the front of the line for Richard Sherman. I've got a couple of different ones, but pass rush I think is so important for this team. Kerry Hyder's been great for the 49ers during the injury replacement rush of this past year. Should be gotten fairly inexpensively for the Jets. I think Kerry Hyder makes sense. If they want to go a little more expensive, make a run at Yannick Ngakoue. But one thing we saw when that 49ers defense is working well, what does it have? It has pass rushers off the edge, and I think that's what Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh need to target. Give me somebody who's going to be out.
Well, I think the obvious candidate, and I'll be really surprised if he's back on this roster, is Henry Anderson. He was a terrible signing. He's got he's got a bad contract. He's way overpaid, $9.5 million. If they keep him, Mike, if they move on from him, they can save $8.2 million. It just makes a ton of sense. I mean, he just hasn't been good for them. A bad signing. Now he's overpaid. You got to get rid of this guy and move on and upgrade your pass rush elsewhere.
You know, another guy that I think needs to be on the radar screen, although they don't have a lot of receivers, when you've got Jamison Crowder with a $10.375 million cap figure for 2020, there's already been some reports that he may get whacked. It won't surprise me, but you got to have other plans at receiver. And, you know, are you going to turn around and spend that money on Juju Smith-Schuster? Are you going to go after Chris Godwin? I mean, they need guys at the receiver position, especially if they're going to try to upgrade at quarterback. One of the reasons Sam Darnold maybe hasn't been as good as he needs to be is he hasn't had a great array of weapons around him. But I would not be surprised if the $10.375 million earmarked for Crowder ends up going to some other receiver that they make a run at, Charean, in free agency.
Yeah, I had Chris Godwin, Mike, and I just think it's going to be hard for the Buccaneers to franchise either one of those guys, Shaq Barrett or Chris Godwin. And we know they're going to lose some players, despite what they've said. It sounds great that they're going to take that hometown discount and come back and try to win a second consecutive Super Bowl. We know the realities of this. It's all about money, Mike. Those guys are going to get more money elsewhere. So Chris Godwin is one I think probably won't be franchise tagged and probably will go elsewhere. And the Jets should be in on him.
Yeah, you know, Shaq Barrett is a guy that they much more desperately need to keep in Tampa Bay because of what he brings to the pass rush. And I don't want to minimize the skills of Chris Godwin, but the reality is you bump Antonio Brown up on the depth chart. You've got Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson, and the Buccaneers will be in position as other teams shed veteran free agents. If receivers are cut, when receivers are cut, that's when the Tom Brady factor kicks in, and that's when you can get somebody potentially to come take very little to be on the depth chart and to be catching passes from Tom Brady, whoever it may be. And there will be plenty of recognizable names that are available on the open market. And Chris Godwin is going to be in a position where he attracts so much money. I don't expect him to say no. Why should he say no? But the Buccaneers aren't going to match whatever's out there. And you only got one franchise tag to use. And if you're going to use it, you use it on Shaq Barrett. Now, what they could try to do is a long-term deal with Shaq Barrett before the 2-week window for applying the franchise tag expires 2 weeks from tomorrow, and then put it on Chris Godwin. But yeah, there's only so many cap dollars, especially this year. It's not going to be easy to do. So there will be young receivers on the front end of their prime available for the Jets if they're ready to pay. And that's the question. How much money are they going to budget, Charean, for a guy like a Chris Godwin or a Juju Smith-Schuster? You think about the offense that Mike LaFleur comes from in San Francisco and how hard-nosed the receivers are and how they have them involved in the running game like a Deebo Samuel. I could see Juju Smith-Schuster in that role.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, Mike. And I also think they need more, obviously, from Denzel Mims. I mean, they spent the second-round pick on him last year. They've got to see more. Injuries, another thing, he had 2 hamstring injuries. That really set him back. Didn't play a ton of games, but he did have a 5-game stretch there, Mike, when he had 6 catches of 20-plus yards. He's shown big catch ability. I think you'll see more out of this guy next year, too.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.